Thank you for joining us
Hi.
today. Hi, Mihaela. How are you?
Hi. Very good. Very excited to, be part of the event, to almost interact with a lot of interesting people. So yeah,
Yeah,
very excited.
me too. So, do you want to transform your web development? Today, me and Mihaela will allow you to discover the power of Blazor. And what you will learn today is building and creating a new web application using Blazor. Could you introduce yourself, Mihaela?
Sure. Hi, I'm Mihaela Ghidersa. I'm a front-end team lead for Atera and also Microsoft MVP for developer technologies. So basically, I like to both code and speak. And yeah, I speak a lot, and I hope that I'm also speaking about good things. Um, and I'm from Romania. And I have to tell you that right now in Romania, it's like 45 minutes past midnight. So yeah, it's I'm from a different environment right now joining you. Nice being here.
Thank you, Mihaela. Me, it's Hamida Rebai. I am Microsoft MVP also in developer technologies. I am cloud solution architect working in Quebec governments, and I am in another place also from the continent. I am in Quebec, Canada. I am also a speaker in multi-conference. It's not my first bill to contribute also, and a book author. So let's start. Here, you can scan this QR code to have the link. The link will be shared by a moderator also, and you will find all the exercises that we will see today. Please say hi and tell us from where you are seeing our session today to learning about Blazor. And I would like also to say thank you to moderators. Please use the Q&A to ask any questions, and they keep an eye about your questions, and we answer you. And moderators also, we can answer you also by chat. Could you tell me, Mihaela, about our learning objectives today?
I thought you'd never ask. Well, in this presentation, we will focus on 3 key learning objectives. As you can see, firstly, we'll dive into configuring our local environment for Blazor development and using Visual Studio Code. So the setup is pretty simple and smooth. Next, we will guide you through creating a brand new Blazor project. We will be able to see the structure and to see how, the first setup goes in order to create some components. And finally, we'll be adding client-side logic to your Blazor web app. And we'll try to cover the fundamentals of Blazor's component model and show you how to leverage it to create dynamic and interactive user experiences. So whether you're new to Blazor or looking to just expand your expertise, I hope that this presentation will equip you with the necessary skills to do these first steps into it, or at least, do a recap for your knowledge.
Thank
you.
Yeah,
this is pretty much what we try. Okay, so since we've been, doing so, trying to market this to you and telling you about the learning objectives, let's see exactly what we are going to do today. So we are discussing about Blazor. So why this discussion? Well, web app companies often hire developers for various roles. I'm sure that in our discussion also we have a wide variety of developers. Some specialize in backend, others focus on client side. This separation often involves using different programming languages and technologies. So C# and Microsoft.NET are commonly used for server-side logic, while in the client side, we mostly rely on JavaScript, right? Well, this language and toolset diversity requires distinct skill set and often creates the separation in the teams. So data transfer and representation code must be built in both languages and then to be synchronized. Well, with Blazor, developers can build front-end and back-end logic for web apps with common languages, frameworks, and even tools. So using the same language for front-end and back-end code can accelerate app development, reduce the complexity of the build pipeline, simplify maintenance, and of course, because we think about developers, is going to let developers understand and work on both client-side and server-side code. So we don't have that, trying to understand each other kind of interaction. So let's see a bit, what is Blazor? We've been mentioning it, and we kind of got an idea about what is happening in there. But more precisely, what is the base of this? So Blazor is a web framework that allows developers to build interactive web user interfaces using C# instead of JavaScript. So it enables the creation of client-side web applications entirely on C# or combining C# and Razor syntax, And about Razor, Hamida is going to tell us a lot more later, so we'll go into details about this. But it's important to keep in mind, maybe, that Blazor leverages the power of WebAssembly to execute the C# code in the browser that we were mentioning. This results in a rich and responsive web application. So with Blazor, developers can write code once and run it on both the client and server, and provide a seamless developer experience in the end, because this is also something that we strive for, right? We are taking care of our users and our clients, but we are also interested on being as efficient as possible and to do the best work. So Blazor enables the creation of reusable web components using C#, HTML, and CSS. This is something that we are clear on. But it also allows developers to build client and server-side code using C#. And this facilitates, as we were mentioning before, code sharing and maybe using common libraries for some tasks. So by using C# for all code, data sharing, code reuse, even maintenance is being simplified. Blazor can generate server-side code for UI interactions over WebSocket and client-side web apps that run directly in the browser via WebAssembly. So basically, we are kind of
but
shaping
why we need to use Blazor? Mihaela, why we need to use Blazor? We know that we don't need to learn a lot of languages like JavaScript, TypeScript. We use just C#. We have HTML, CSS integrated. But why we need to use Blazor?
Indeed, you pointed very, very well the fact that we already have this variation of technologies on the client side, right? So why are we actually introducing something new? And I want to point out from the beginning that this is not a comparison kind of discussion. So we are not going to compare with other technologies, because I really, really believe in the fact that context is what gives value to a technology that we are using, and that we shouldn't do this kind of comparisons. It's important to note that choosing the best front-end framework depends on various factors, such as the requirements that we have in the project, the expertise that the team has, maybe some performance considerations if we have some areas that we really need to take care of. Even what is the ecosystem that we are using? Is it compatible with the technology that we want to work with? So, of course, while Blazor offers some advantages, as we discussed, other frameworks also give some enhanced strengths. But here we are going to discuss a bit about some notable points where actually Blazor stands out. So we have the language consistency. I already mentioned that, so I'm not going to insist on it, but it's cool to use the same technology for both a front end and back end. Then we have this productivity with component-based architecture, because Blazor follows a component-based architecture just as we have in React and Angular. And this approach enhances code organization and reusability, because this is something extremely important, especially on the way that our applications are not developing, but more like evolving, and also the user needs. So with Blazor components, you can encapsulate UI and logic into some self-contained modules, and it's easier to test them because they are independent, and also to maintain because of this independence. Then the lack of need of JavaScript. So if there are out there developers that are, that been working since forever with JavaScript and they just need a break from it, there is no need for this. Blazor totally eliminates the need for us to write JavaScript code, but this doesn't mean that we cannot work with them. So it's not like if there are some that want to try also C# and JavaScript, there is an intersection point that they can try. Then we have the ecosystem that .NET is giving us. So Blazor is tightly integrated with everything that we have in this ecosystem. And of course, this integration offers developers access to a lot of already tested, developed libraries, third-party packages, and so on. So in here we have a lot of support. Then we have the server side and client side rendering options, because as we were mentioning before, how things are happening on both server and client. Blazor provides flexibility in choosing what kind of rendering model we want. And I'm not going to even insist on the tooling and the community and support that we have, because we are discussing about again, an ecosystem that's been growing since forever, and an active community of developers that are giving feedback, constant feedback to Microsoft products. So we have a lot of resources and documentation and community-driven libraries to work to help us with. So yeah, it's strong in this. So these are some reasons why we can consider using Blazor in our applications.
Yeah, thank you. And you talked about WebAssembly. Some people that maybe don't have any idea about what is WebAssembly and what is the relation between WebAssembly and the Blazor. So WASM known by WASM. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically WebAssembly, it might seem like, oh, assembly, what?
Yeah.
This sounds like we are, going back in time, but it's not like that. This is an optimized low-level bytecode designed for the web. So let's say that it doesn't replace JavaScript, but more like it complements it. So it's offering a new perspective on the web application development. It integrates, as I was saying, with JavaScript, and it enables collaboration between the two. Some key points of WebAssembly, let's say it comes from the language flexibility, because WebAssembly is not tied to any specific programming language. High performance, as in we have it designed to execute code at almost native speed. So we are discussing in there of, as I was mentioning before, when it comes to performance, comes with a big advantage. And then we are discussing, being cross-platform compatible, and a lot of other characteristics that are helping depending on the context that we have in the application. But you are mentioning about, okay, what's the deal with Blazor and WebAssembly? Because basically this is what's important for us today. So WebAssembly and Blazor team up in something like this. We have Blazor, and then comes WebAssembly that enables us to run .NET code directly in a browser, using the WebAssembly standards. Let's say it serves as a plugin-free single-page app framework. Let's put it like this. So basically, it's a facilitator for us. When we are executing .NET code through WebAssembly in a browser, I think this is it deserves to be highlighted. It operates securely within the browser's JavaScript sandbox. So this ensures the implementation of necessary security measures to prevent, the usual client-side security issues. So it comes with another layer on this part.
Okay, we can see that from here. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, as you can see, I'm excited about it. But Blazor uses WebAssembly module with a compiled .NET runtime. So this is downloaded alongside the app. So yeah, they are actually working very well together in order to achieve our objectives when it comes to working with .NET and actually with C# in our browser.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, so basically it has a very important role in this whole environment.
Yeah.
And maybe the last piece of the puzzle when we are discussing about this whole ecosystem, it's the Blazor server. Yeah, we've been discussing about Blazor and we discussed about WebAssembly, but it's important to also mention and take a look at the Blazor server, because this is what enables the hosting of Razor components on the server within an ASP.NET Core app. UI updates are managed through a single R connection. Of course, in here, you can go more into details regarding what is happening behind, and we have strong documentation that I recommend, and we will also leave in the end some resources in order for the participants to go and seek more information. But let's say that in Blazor server, the server-side runtime executes the application C# code, receives some UI events from the browser, and applies those UI updates to the server's renders component. So, long story short, that's how simplified. That's how the flow goes. Of course, we will see in the examples that we will have further and how things are working. We will see a bit of syntax, but it's good to have an overview on what we are actually discussing today, and then the links are going to be made a bit later if it's a lot of information.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we will leave a lot of link because 1 hour is not enough to talk about Blazor, the different components related to Blazor. And after talking about Blazor, WebAssembly, the relation between them, here we need to know what is supported as browser here. We say that all is we load all in a browser. It can be desktop or mobile browser. So these browsers are supported.
Yeah, this is a list of the browsers that support this kind of technology and operations. Okay. So we have Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari. This is also something to take into consideration. So next time when your client maybe comes with a strange requirement when it comes to the browser that they want to support, check this list just to be sure that
but we know
you're
that
safe.
The most of clients using Edge or Firefox at least, or Chrome of Google, or for Apple customer are using Safari also. So we have a range of browsers are supported for Blazor also. Yeah. So now I know that you talked about the Blazor server. Could you tell me more about that? So before starting, at least creating an application using Blazor server.
Sure. So I think that what we can add up to what we already discussed is the fact that the same connection used for communication with the browser in Blazor server, it's also used for handling the JavaScript interrupt calls that we were mentioning before. So this is the missing piece that we were discussing about when it comes to the Blazor server. So just as a wrap up, it's executing an app C# code, sending UI events from the browser to the server, as we were mentioning before, and it's applying those updates to the render components that are being sent back by the server.
We get
pretty
a question.
Important role, right?
Yeah, we get the question. Yes, we get a question from in the chat. So the question is, can we invoke functions in other WebAssembly module written by C or C++ from our Blazor C# code?
Well, actually, WebAssembly, very good question. WebAssembly, it's working with C, C++.
Yeah, exactly.
How exactly we can integrate them, or how deep we can go into actually doing actions in there, I think it depends on what the context of the product and how exactly we are doing the connections there, how everything works behind. But for sure, it has this capability.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we share a link about this, how you can do that, okay? In the end of the session. Or after, you can reach us
Yeah.
by LinkedIn or email if we are not able to share all the links required related to your questions. Thank you. So it's about Blazor server, and now it's time to try to see some practical exercises. So we will follow what is in Microsoft Learn about creating an application Blazor. So you can build a Blazor application by using the latest version of Visual Studio 2022. If you are using Mac, you have also the latest version of Visual Studio for Mac. Also Visual Studio Code. Today we will use for the most of exercises we will use Visual Studio Code. I will show you in the beginning just how we create a Blazor server application using Visual Studio 2022, but the other exercises we will use Visual Studio Code. Whatever your development environment, you will need to install your framework, .NET framework. It can be .NET 6, .NET 7, so SDK. So it depends from the environment that you are using, the framework that you are using, but you need to install the SDK of the .NET 6 or 7. If you will be working with Visual Studio 2022, donc you will need to include the ASP.NET and web development when you install your Visual Studio to ensure that .NET 6 or 7 after SDK is already installed and the tools are available on Visual Studio. So we will find Razor server, the different, I will show you after, the different templates related to Razor. You are able to display them. And after the installation, you will have everything you need to build your Blazor apps. We know today it's as we said before, so it's ready for starter. You start with creating Blazor. So the different exercise that we built today, it's really simple to follow, but we share in the end different links to learn more about Blazor for some other complex scenario. Today the scenario will be really simple: to do list, a counter that we will show. So, but really the basics exercise. They are basics exercises related to Blazor. So let's start the first one, creating our first Blazor web application. So here we will create a new Blazor application and we'll just run the application to see how it runs. We will use Visual Studio Code. I will show you that using .NET CLI, and we will use also Visual Studio 2022. It's really simple. Just we will select the suitable template related to Blazor to be able to create our Blazor application. So I will start with Visual Studio Code here. I selected a specific directory, and here I will open the terminal and use it. As I said before, I will use command line .NET CLI if you'd like to use them. So here we'll use .NET new Blazor server. It's called 2 times here. Sorry for that. So here we use a new .NET new Blazor server, just to say that I would like to create a Blazor server application. Here I give a name to my application Blazor app. I don't need to use, in my case, HTTPS protocol. And I'm using here the framework minus F. It means that I will select the specific framework that's, in my case, is .NET 7, or you can use .NET 6. So it depends from what is installed as SDK in your machine. So this command create a new Blazor application project, and it will place it in the repository called Blazor app. And to be able to run my application, we will use .NET Watch or .NET Watch Run. So it depends, but I need to go to my application, so Blazor app, and here, and to be able to run it. So .NET watch, I will say here. And I will run now my application. We see the sample, so it's a default sample that will include different tabs. We check here my browser. It's supposed to be more faster, but I have a lot of things in my machine. Sorry for that. So, and as
Always
you
in
can
the
see,
demo, it happens like this. It's always in the demo.
no, okay, thank you. Here we have home, we have a counter, so we have another one, fetch data. So this is simple, it's really simple application, and we try to work on this one. And if you'd like just to take a look about what was generated when we tried to create this one, as you can see here, we have the different pages. We have the counter. As you can see here, we have .razor, the extension is razor. And we have the program. So it's the principal program as usual, as in ASP.NET or any other application. And we have a shared part here where we have the menu, the different elements that we will add. We will see that after. This is about Visual Studio Code. So if you are using Visual Studio 2022, we just select create a new project. And after we try just to specify the Blazor here. As you can see here, you can just say Blazor. You can select just Blazor and you will have a lot of template, as you can see. In our case today, we just focus on creating Blazor server application. So just we click on the first one. As you can see, we have others, and it depends from the scenario, from the context. And here we give a name, location also. So it's the same as creating a .NET application using Visual Studio 2022. And we click after next. We select your framework. You can select .NET 7, .NET 6. So it depends from what is installed as SDK on your machine. We'll disable here, we don't need it. You see here that we are able to enable also containers, so we can use Docker for to create containers for Blazor application also, but in our case, just make it more simple. Just we'll create simple Blazor application here, Blazor server application, and we click on create. And the structure after creation will be the same as we have in Visual Studio Code, as we have here. So here we have different pages, and we see here that we have counter, .razor, fetch data, the index, the first page that we displayed in the beginning here, the index. If we try just to select here, for example, we have the shared part here. We have the nav menu. We will see that in another exercise. We will add a new let's say another part, another page, let's say another page in our application to see how we can bind different elements, how we can create a page, link this page to our menu. So this is really simple as we see here. So this is the first part, how we create and run a Blazor web application. So let's discover more about Razor components. Now that you have your development environment set up, you will use Visual Studio Code, use Visual Studio 2022, you will use .NET 6, .NET 7, .NET 8, maybe. So now we need to explore the structure of a Blazor project and learn how to add the new pages. So we already see that we have a repository, a directory with name pages that include different 3 pages. In our case, we have the shared part, and let's say that what is the Razor? Why we use Razor in our case? So a Razor is a market app syntax that uses HTML and C# for writing UI components for Blazor web applications. And we know that Razor is based on ASP.NET and designed for creating web application. So nothing different from what we learned before. If you already using or developing application using ASP.NET, you are able to create any application in Blazor because it's the same. We use always Razor in our case. And Razor defines components that make up a portion of the application user interface. So components in Blazor are analogic to user controls in ASP.NET Web Forms. If we try to explore our project, you remember that we have some .razor files. So at compile time, each Razor component is built into .NET class, and the class includes a common UI elements like state, rendering logic, lifecycle methods, and event handlers. So when we run our application, if you remember, when we try to run our application, we navigated to the counter page. Let's do it here. We have a counter page. We are able to click here, click me, click me, click me. You see that I'm able to increment the counter without a page refresh. Incrementing a counter in a web page normally requires writing JavaScript, but with Blazor, we will use only C#. As we said before, it's really we use just C#. And if you'd like to see more in detail about the implementation of the counter components, we will go to the page of Razor counter.razor in our Visual Studio Code, for example. We can check here. And we see here that it's simple. We have a button here. It's HTML. We have an event, let's say, on click. And we have a method called increment count. When we click here on the button, it calls, let's say it calls our implement here. As we can see here, the counter, it calls our method, and the method just increment our counter. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. So it depends from when we click, we increment. It's really simple method. And this method, it's called increment count. Its method is called, as you can see here, it's a private method we created. We just defined current count and we just add this one. So it's really simple example. It's in ASP.NET, sometimes we need to create a JavaScript function to be able to make the same thing like the same counter. But in our case, it's really, really simple. We don't need to refresh the page to update. And when we run, so we just already tried our counter. So when we run our application and we navigate to the counter, we click on click me. So it's really simple here. So it's really, really simple to create the same thing using a button. So we will try after to add another example by adding a to-do list. We will see how we can just create to-do lists. We are able to just to check my to-do list, for example, to link the different elements also. So this is an example of a counter where we are able to test it when you create your application. So we have the same example in Visual Studio 2022 with the same template used for both of them. So let's go to see if you are able to answer to the question. So you really understand the difference between Blazor, WebAssembly, about this exercise. So
Yeah, actually,
yeah,
it feels like it's the moment for us to stop a bit from talking,
yeah.
and seeking some feedback, checking the vibe to see what is happening. So let's think a bit about this one. So after we've been discussing until now, Blazor web apps use which runtime again? Because I don't remember exactly. You can use the link, and you can also use the QR code in order to go and just put your answer in there and see exactly if we are on the same page.
Okay, we give you some seconds to answer before giving the answer. Okay.
A lot of activity in the poll.
Okay.
I like
okay.
this.
What do you think? Okay, it's okay. And it's the good answer. I'm not able to see the second the answer.
I'm curious about what you're going to say, but for now, I see that. Can I say?
Okay.
Can I say?
I'm revealing the answer here. Okay, so it's B. So it's the .NET runtime deployed with your web application because Blazor apps run in the browser or on the server on the .NET runtime, .NET 5 runtime, in our case, .NET 6 runtime. It depends from the runtime, the version. So this is B. Let's go to another question here. Last one to see if it's okay. It's really clear for you or not.
How is Blazor
So
UI defined?
UI defined
Mm.
here. So it's a Razor page with a mix of HTML and C Sharp. It's a XAML page with XML. It's C Sharp defined in .NET standard libraries. It's really simple, this one.
This one screams. This one screams.
Okay, I need 3 seconds here because it's really simple. Okay. So the first one, yes, because Razor file
Okay.
will define the different components that make up portion of a UI for the app. So we have another exercise. Mihaela, could you show us how we are able to add a component in a simple way? Really, it's really simple.
Yeah.
So
So basically in this exercise, we are going to just add the counter component to the home page, and we are going to modify it just to see exactly how, how it's interacting with the changes and what is happening behind. I'm going to share my screen for
yes, please. Yeah.
a minute, just to
I think
see
you
exactly.
already created your Blazor application.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I've been
okay,
doing it while you were doing it
at the same time.
also. So I'm a
Okay,
very patient and uh, careful student.
okay, nice.
Okay,
Uh, could you share?
let's
So I
see.
stop sharing here.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, for now, we have the same application that we were seeing before. Yeah, the simple one with the counter that goes the way we are expecting it. One thing that I want to mention is the module, yeah, that we are working with. Yeah, we are, as I was mentioning in the beginning, we are going or following the structure that we have in Learn, Microsoft Learn. So if you want to learn more, to do this exercise again later, maybe you want to go over it again, you can access this as we were mentioning before. We will have also the resources, but just to make it clear exactly on what we are doing in here. So we are on the part where we are adding a component. And the objective is to add the counter component to the home page. So let's see how we are going to do this. When we try to add a component to another component, maybe the syntax will seem pretty familiar to you. Yeah. So basically, we added the tag for that component in the component where we wanted it to be present. I'm going to go again in here, and I'm going to see that the counter now appears also in the home page. So basically, we added a component, very easy to work with, maybe familiar for some of you that have been working before with components on the client side. The next thing that I want us to do is to modify a component like this. So basically, we are going to do a small change in counter. And this change consists on adding an input, yeah, a new parameter, and then giving to that input a value just to see that something is changing in our application, in our component specifically.
Yeah.
So for this example, we are going to work with an increment amount, yeah, just to stick with amount. Yeah, we're going to have, and for now we are going to initialize it, yeah, in the beginning with 1. Very important in order to be perceived as I was saying as a parameter, yeah, as something that is going to receive a value from outside. We also have to add an attribute, which is the parameter. As you can see, it's very kind to us, and it's also giving us the option to see the documentation, for what we are using. And in here, instead of incrementing with 1 always, we are going to try to increment with this value that we are receiving from outside. So all the changes that we needed in counter are being made, but still we are not going to see any change. If we look in here, we are going to see that things have stayed the same. What we have to do is to give a value, because right now we are still incremented with 1. So let's see how we are going to give a value from outside. And we are going to do it like this. Amount, and we are going to give it 10. Going back again. Let's see, we did some changes. It seems that, yes, I would like that very much. And we are going to see that now the incremental is happening as expected. So basically, we've been sending some information from one component to another. We are doing one-way communication between the components. And we also modified something inside. So as you've seen, it's a pretty straightforward syntax. Of course, we have to make maybe to take care a bit about certain details in order to have some of the things that we are trying to achieve work, but pretty much this is what we try to do and how it looks.
Yes, it's really simple. It's really simple.
Yeah.
It's really simple.
Yeah, of course.
See how it simplified the things for the developer here. We try to improve the way of developing our application, our solution here, as we see in your example here.
Yeah, of course, we are not going to, just promise that all of your applications will be this simple. With great power comes great responsibility. So if you're building a very strong application, you have to be very careful about how you're implementing these components, what is the structure, how you are thinking about reusable components. So this is a different discussion that we're using for all technologies, but still it's important to take into account and don't go, directly into implementing.
Yeah. Thank you for the example here. And could you talk about data binding and events? We see that we have a lot of things that we are able to communicate with. So what is really data binding and events in our case, in Blazor specifically? It allows you to do what? For example, in our case, it's a connection between data with your interface. It's similar to ASP.NET, or it's a little bit different.
So basically, we are discussing about being able, we are just mentioning right now that we've just sent some information from one component to another, but we need to also see a bit, okay, maybe I'm trying to work with some events, or maybe I'm trying to do some changes, and interact with other components in a certain way. So after defining an application's UI, let's see a bit how we can incorporate more complex logic into the application. And we are discussing, of course, in Blazor, where we can include C# code in separate C# files or directly within our Razor components. And we already saw the syntax for that. You saw with code, and then the whole section where we can add code. So in Blazor, we can add C# files directly into our application project, just the way for .NET developers, the way you are adding it to .NET. So nothing special in here. And this technique for the ones that are working in this already, that is called code behind, and it involves using separate code files to store the application's logic. So basically, we are trying to keep them as clean, as independent as possible. By employing separate files, it's important to know that one of the beneficial or the benefit when dealing with a lot of information, maybe a lot of logic, this is where we see the benefit, because we are stripping down, and keeping, let's say, we are using the single responsibility principle. Maybe in this case, we are stripping the logic in one side and then the UI in the other side, and it's easier to follow and to test and to keep as clean as possible. You're mentioning about data binding. So I'm just going to put some words about this. So basically, data binding in Blazor allows you to connect data to user interface elements. What we've been doing before, it wasn't really user data, it was something that we mount, but still. What is the scope of this? We try to keep them as synchronized as possible. So when the user is doing some action, I want to see the result of that action in the UI, right? As expected. So you can achieve this by specifying the data source and binding expression in your markup or code. And we are going to see this just in a couple of minutes. Events on the other side are actions. Yeah. So I'm doing, as a user, I'm triggering some action in the application and I'm expecting something to happen. So you handle events by defining some event handlers in your code and specifying the logic that you want in order to execute in the moment when that event is being triggered. A common practice is to combine, HTML and C# and use a Razor component file. And we are going to see this just in a moment. In order to insert code into a Razor file, you can use directives, and Hamida will provide more detailed explanations and further elaborate on this matter with some examples. So please, I'm leaving the stage for you.
Thank you. So now we need to understand more about Razor directives. What are Razor directives? It's really simple. They are component markup used to add C# inline with HTML. So simple HTML with C#. And with the directives, developers can define single statements, method, or larger code blocks. Now, I'm not a fan about definitions. It's better to see the exercise after to understand more about what is called what is Razor directives. But we need just to understand also what is code directives. In code directives, we should be familiar to developers who have already used Razor in MVC or pages. So we use add to add a C# statement in line with HTML. So it's the same as we used before in any MVC application or pages. And if you require more code, you use the add code, in our case, directive, to add multiple statements. So it allows us to have at least something in order, well written, so clear for another developer to see. So we add only just add code directive, and it will be enclosed by parentheses. For functions, we add function section to the template for methods and properties, and they should be added to the top of the generated class where the document can reference them. And next, in the page, what is page directive? We will use @page directive. It's a special markup that identifies a component as a page. So just we add @page. It means this component is a page. You can use this directive to specify a route. So route maps to an attribute route that the Blazor engine recognizes to register and access the page. And what is Razor data binding? We talked about data binding events also, but in a Razor data binding within Razor components, we can add data behind HTML elements to C# fields, properties, and Razor expression values. Data binding allows two-way synchronization between HTML and Microsoft.NET. So data is pushed from HTML to .NET when a component is rendered. So components render themselves after event handler code executes, which is why property updates are reflected in the UI immediately after an event handler is triggered. And we use @bind markup to bind a C# variable to an HTML object. So you will define the C# variable by a name as a string in the HTML. And now we see an exercise that help us to understand more about these elements, this really at bind, at data, so all what we already discussed. What we do, so we start by creating to-do page. We see how we can add a page inside. How we will use Visual Studio Code in our case, but we can do the same in Visual Studio 2022. It's more simple. After we will add a to-do component to the navigation bar, we see how we add it. We are able to display to-do in our index in our first page. It's simple. We create a to-do item. We bind a list of to-do items, and we will add form elements to create to-do. So we try to make it that faster. And I will open now Visual Studio Code. And as Mihaela did, so we'll follow the same steps in Microsoft Learn, what is shared already by moderators, and we shared also after if it's not shared with the different links. So to create a to-do page, I will try to just to close this one, and I will use .NET New Razor components. I will just copy that to be able to go faster. Razor components, and we give a name here to do, and it will be on page in the repository on page. As you can see here in the page, we have a new to do Razor. It's really empty. We try to add at least it's not really empty, but we have already a to-do name and a place where we will add our code. It will be the C# code in our case. Now we try to add the to-do component to the navigation bar. It's really simple. We say that we have a navbar in shared part because the navigation bar is a shared component, will be shared with the other pages. So it will be in the shared directory, and in nav menu here, we try to see, I'll try just to create this one to be able to have a good view. So here the first one, as you can see, it's class nav item. We use here the class nav link, and this is for home, this is for counter, this is for fetch data, if you remember the page that we already tested before. And I'm adding a new one with the name of to do. And we need just to say we were going to the page to do. So it's as you can see, like counter, so it will map directly with to do this page one. Let's try to just .NET Watch to see it works or not. Before adding more elements here, because we will create a new class item to be able to implement more our to do item. Okay. It takes a few times. Okay, this is my, if you remember my application, I will click here to do. Nothing's already because it's empty. We have only just the name. And after we go back here, and I'm adding in Blazor app a new class called item. I will check the name here. It will be item to do item. Just we use this one. Don't forget to add the C. And here we declare a title. It will be a nullable string. It's a new class. It's a new class. We have a title and is done. So a title of your item to do, and is done to say it's done or not. So we'll use checkbox after to see how we can bind the different element, the data with our page. Now we'll try to bind the list of to-do items. Let's go back to our already created. It's empty. We remember that it's empty. I'll try by creating a list here. As you can see, it will be a private list to do using a to do item class that we already created before. It's empty one. It's new. It's empty one, and the goal is to create for each class. So we try to see to have to display our title here in the beginning. So I'm
maybe
using.
we can look on the code that we have on the module. So in this way we can. We have 5 minutes left.
5 minutes, okay. So okay, I will try to just to copy the content after I will. Okay, it's okay. Thank you for just see the time. So I will try to copy all the code that is in the module here. So here you remember that we already created a list, a new list, and here we try to implement our list with the empty string, because the user will add these elements in the web page. And I'll try here to shut down our application. And what we need to add for the second, this is for the first part. I try to save this one to be able to see. And for the razor part, I'm go back here. It's really simple. So for each, no changes here, I guess, to do here. We have some changes to do here. So we try to display the title, and we will add a checkbox. When we select the checkbox, the is done will be changed. So we check it, and we will change the status of our item to the item in our case. I guess it's we are done here. Let's try to check here, and here I would like to add in to do here, just to have an idea about what's done, what is not done. And I guess it's the entire of source code that we need to add to be able to display. Let's do that. Let's try it here. .NET Watch, and let's see if we are ready for that. So we updated our Razor part. So we added a list, empty list here, and we try to check it. I'm going here. To-do list here. I'm adding something here. Learning Blazor, for example.
Definitely.
This one, creating my app, my first app. This is your goal after. Run my app, for example. As you can see, it's really simple here. So we have here, we can check that to do 1, 2, 3, as you can see. So the counter is not right. So we need to make some update, but you can see here. So this is our example. You can try it on Visual Studio, as I said before. Here you find the learning part, the exercise here in the link that already shared before here, as you can see. So we have the different steps. We don't have time to do that. And let's summarize today what we did. So I know it's an hour, it's not sufficient to start to talk about Blazor, but I suppose learning a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope that we answered along the way also some of the questions. But long story short, I think Blazor represents an incredible opportunity for developers to, build web applications with C# and try to use this, the power of this kind of technologies. And I really hope that all developers will remain open-minded and always search for the right technology for their project. So before making a decision, they actually research on what they are actually trying to do. And I really hope that from now on, Blazor, will be one of the options that you are going to think about and research more, maybe to see exactly what is happening in there. So if you want to continue your learning journey, of course, you can check out the resources, and don't forget to give us feedback.
Yeah. Just scan this QR code to your QR code, sorry, to be able to learn to continue your learning journey with Blazor. And I don't know if we have questions pending here. I'll try to check the chat. We still have 1 minute, only 1 minute, but really thank you for joining us today. I hope you liked the learning session, and thank you, Mihaela, for the definition.
Thank you. It was really nice.
Your sample is really interesting here.
And happy coding. I really hope that everyone's apps bring joy and value to their users, and everyone is happy at the end of the day. So thank you very much for being with us, and reach out, right? If maybe you want to discuss more, reach out.
Yeah. Yes, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter also. So we are if you have any questions after this one, I know after learning we start thinking about questions.
And don't forget about feedback. If you have feedback for us or for the session, why not? Let us
Yes,
know.
feedback is really important. So we improve our way of. It's my first time to be in due in a session, so thank you. It's really simple. You make it easy for me also.
It was really nice.
It's yes, nice. You make me think about to do it again. Okay.
Oh, that's nice then. I'm glad to
Yes.
hear that.
Thank you.